This is Jasper.
And this is Randy. The next movie up is our Tarantino pick of the episode. This is Reservoir Dogs from 1992. This is written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. Also, Roger Avery is credited as a writer. And the overview, according to the moviedb.org, a botched robbery indicates a police informant, and the pressure mounts in the aftermath at a warehouse. Crime begets violence as the survivors, veteran Mr. White, newcomer Mr. Orange, psychopathic parolee Mr. Blonde, bickering weasel Mr. Pink, and nice guy Eddie unravel. This has got a whole bunch of people. Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, Michael Madsen, Chris Penn, Steve Buscemi, Lawrence Tierney, Randy Brooks, Edward Bunker, Mr. Blue, he's hardly in it, Quentin Tarantino, and other people. There's more people. But that's the main cast there. Reservoir Dogs. I've seen this before. More than a couple times. So, Jasper, had you ever seen Reservoir Dogs before?
I've seen bits and pieces. My brother was a huge fan of this movie and always tried to get me to watch it. But this is back when I was younger. But no, this would be the first full watch of it.
It's been a little while since I watched this. I feel like I've had this on a couple formats, but I have this super cool like collector's edition DVD of this that is, the DVD case itself is like a matchbook. Like it's like a huge matchbook. You open it up and it's got the disc in there. And then that goes inside of a metal container, a metal case, which is a gas can. It's pretty cool. But what did you think of this?
I like this one. The only kind of like thing I have is I wish there's a little bit more of the heist of it, you know. I get why he kind of left it out. But I like this one because there's just so much going on that you're like you're almost on the same like freaked out level that they are. Like, because you're like, what the hell's going on? Like, you know, or what went wrong or what happened. Like, you're stuck in a total tension filled, like, what is going on? Why did it go south? You know,
to touch on that point, and I don't want to totally derail your initial thoughts here. I think this is a super strong debut for Tarantino, like as a director, because you're right. It feels like there's a lot going on all the time and it's super tense. Dude, it's just people talking the whole movie. I mean, there's a couple little bits of action where you get a little bit of the aftermath of like the immediate aftermath of the heist. But for the most part, it's all tension and urgency built through dialogue, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, and then they kind of are like almost turning on each other, like right off the bat. It's like, why did this happen? And, you know, who let this guy in on the job? And, you know, I don't trust this kid that's, you know, bleeding out on the floor. I kind of was always laughing too that the guy is just laying on the floor the whole freaking movie.
The whole movie. Tim Roth is ridiculous in this movie. Like, I don't know if it's a good performance or not. I've never been able to figure it out. It's memorable, though, I guess. That's the main thing. It's not a bad performance, but it's such a weird decision. Like, Tim Roth's choices. Mr. Orange, when he's shot and he's freaking out, he's like a weird Cookie Monster. Mr. White. Like, it's so strange. Man, I actually really enjoyed this rewatch. It's been a number of years since I watched this, and I have seen it a bunch. So part of me was like, I like Reservoir Dogs. I just don't know if I want to watch it again. But then once I started it and it got through that first scene, I'm like, okay, nope, I'm back on board. I understand. I understand the appeal. Tarantino, you know, his other movies does have like some weird action, crazy action moments and stuff, but he's got such a way with dialogue scenes and characters, and they're almost always characters that you hate. Like, they're just disgusting characters, but he's got such a way about filming those scenes and the way he writes dialogue that just kind of grabs you. And I'm glad the first opening scene doesn't go on longer than it does, but it's just like a scene of nothing. Like, it's just them talking at a table about ridiculous stuff, but then you're kind of into it. and then it does that weird slow-mo where it's not actually shot in slow-mo, but it's like that jerky, like it's just they slowed the frame rate down.
Mm-hmm.
Such interesting decisions that, like, I don't know, it pulled me right in. I highly enjoyed this rewatch.
And it was kind of cool to go through the trivia and see that they did this movie on a very low budget, you know.
It makes total sense because there's like a handful of sets. Most of it takes place in a bare bones warehouse. I mean, it was kind of brilliant in that respect. It can be a low budget. It doesn't need to be a huge budget. It's very straightforward, basic in that respect. There's a lot in it that makes it feel like a low budget movie, and it kind of makes sense if it was kind of a low budget movie. But even the sound, it's clear they didn't necessarily like go back and do ADR, like overdub everyone's voices later with better recordings. A lot of the sound in the warehouse sounds like it's recorded just in the warehouse. There's a lot of like reverb in a way that's you wouldn't necessarily hear in a movie where they polish the sound more. It's kind of rough, and it sounds like a B-grade movie. But I'm fairly confident that was probably a creative decision.
And I think that's another reason why they didn't poke in on the heist. You know, for one, it was probably a creative decision, but two, you know, they probably didn't have the budget to
keeps the price down.
Yeah, keeps the price down on you know, doing the heist actually. So,
what do you think of the characters? Are there likable characters here? For me, most of them are pretty despicable. What do you think?
Well, it was funny because like I felt bad for the guy on the floor, like right off the bat. You know, they make him out to be like a young kid, you know, and he shouldn't have got involved. And then you have like that psycho, which I believe was Mr. Blonde, right?
Yep.
And Buscemi's character was just, he basically was letting the plot out as he was talking, but no one believed him, you know. One of the things that was funny with the characters was like that first fight they have over the names, and he's like, "I'm just going to give you the names. You just shut up," you know.
Oh yeah, I like the old guy. Oh, what's his name? Because there's nice guy Eddie is his son. Oh, Joe Cabot is the character's name of it's Lawrence Tierney, the boss putting everything together.
Chris Penn always plays a weird dude too. Nice guy Eddie was weird.
Oh yeah. This is a kind of a Tarantino thing, and they're all criminals. So here's the thing: for me, the closest to the most likable character is Mr. White, but Tarantino makes none of them likable. They're all super racist.
Yeah.
Full spoilers. I mean, Tim Roth doesn't really do the racist thing, and he's supposed to be the good guy. Although I don't know, for some reason I don't feel like he's likable. You know. His situation is interesting, but anyway, they're all super racist. And it's really interesting that we go from a movie from 1956, which we had a little conversation about them dropping the N-bomb, but it was very clear that it wasn't okay. It wasn't the character being racist. It was the character like...
trying to get him away.
Yeah. The character was not okay with it. The movie did not seem okay with it. It was a thing. And then there's this movie where it's Tarantino kind of doing, you know, he kind of gets away with a lot for being like, well, it's like an exploitation movie. It's what they used to do in the exploitation movies. They're all super racist. There's a lot of racist stuff. There's a lot of racial slurs. It's pretty hardcore, and there's very few characters that escape it. They all drop the N-bomb casually, often, and I don't know that the movie gives it it's not like the movie passes it on as like, this is okay. It's just really weird to go from a 1950s movie to a 1990s movie to where I feel like the 50s movie handled racism. And sure, maybe it didn't have to be there at all, but it was. And it handled it so much better than Tarantino did in this movie. But again, we're watching criminals. They're a bunch of bad dudes. They're not supposed to be good dudes. They're not supposed to be likable. They're bad dudes, and they're all paranoid, and they're gonna screw each other over. But man, I don't know. It's weird. That was one thing that was a little surprising, because I always remember Tarantino gets that a lot, where people are like, especially the N-word. All of his movies, it's in there a lot,
right?
For whatever reason, it's in there a lot. So he gets a lot of guff, and like, you know, whatever, white guy here. I'm just like, okay. But watching this, it is a little weird. I could see people being upset about it.
Yeah. I mean, especially the car ride where they're just like rattling off.
That's exactly it. And that's like Mr. White really looks bad there. Because he says a lot of stuff in that to where it's like, not even Mr. White, man. Like the criminal with heart, the criminal with like a sense of like a code drops the N-bomb several times in like really bad derogatory ways. So
and I think that was like the thing in Reservoir Dogs to still show that he's still a piece of like,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah, for sure. No, you're right. They're all just different shades of crap, man. Different shades of crappy.
Right. They're all still criminals and still, degenerates. But I think it was portrayed very well. Like, you're like, oh, this dude has heart, but then no, he's still.
One thing I like is how on point Tarantino, like this is his first, I mean, he directed some short stuff before, but this is his first feature-length this is a directorial debut. How on point with his like image he had through a lot of his initial, through his early movies. He had that certain color and font, that yellow font, yellow orangish font, and just the music just on point, and he carries that through his next couple of movies with some variations. But I don't know, I'm just amazed at how Tarantino it is right away. It's not like Kubrick, where you've got, there's two older movies and we watched a movie that was good, but it still didn't feel like Kubrick, as opposed to Tarantino. I'm not comparing, okay, people. I'm not comparing. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I think they're totally different shades of great. But Tarantino is Tarantino from the get-go. Like, this movie is just pure Tarantino, and all of his movies are. And he's never really deviated from that. And it's kind of amazing just how on point with his vision this movie is.
Like we said before, you could tell it's low budget, but he did a very good job with the budget,
I mean, I think that really adds to it. I think it's perfect. I think it needed to be, it should have been, and to do it in any other way would have fundamentally changed what the movie is. You know what I mean? I also think this movie I could be wrong. I don't have that information in front of me. I'm assuming, this movie was kind of a big deal. I think this movie did extremely well and is probably part of the reason he was able to, like, Pulp Fiction is pretty out there. And I think that how well this movie did, this is kind of like him proving to the studio right off, like, oh, this guy can make a hit. This guy can turn something interesting that actually is still commercially viable. Because I don't know the budget on Pulp Fiction. We'll get into that next episode. But I know it was higher than this. And this movie probably bought him quite a bit of leeway with his future movies. Let's hit some of the iconic stuff. For one, the music. It's got that 70s music, kind of music that Tarantino likes to hit quite a bit in his movies. And it's got a somewhat clever device to like work that into it, where it's, was it Billy's Super Sounds of the 70s or Super 70s Sounds? What is that? K-Billy. The radio playing the 70s songs is K-Billy, Super Sounds of the 70s. And Stephen Wright, he's got that very monotone kind of voice, but he plays K-Billy, the DJ on the radio. That's where a lot of the music ties in to that certain time period of music. I don't know. That's great. What did you think, Jasper, of, I guess the other iconic scene from this movie is Michael Madsen, Mr. Blonde, being crazy on the cop torture scene.
That was pretty gruesome. It was kind of extremely violent. What got me though was Michael Madsen's like terribly against violence.
Oh yeah.
So he had to actually really push himself to even do that part.
He plays this cold, cool psychopath super well. And I think that's really what makes it bothersome, is he's having, like, his character's having a good time. And he cuts the ear off, and you don't even see it, like, right away until he, like, pulls it up and he's, like, talking to it. He's like, can you hear me? And it's like, whoa, dude. That was a bad joke.
I kind of even sat there, too. I was like, holy crap. Like,
That scene is still parodied in stuff to this day. Seriously, I just watched this last week. I rewatched this last week, I think. And in between watching this, this most recent time, and now I seen it parodied in something just recent, just like brand new. I don't remember what it was. It's like a animated thing where the character is doing that certain walk, that little dance that he does, and the music playing. And I was like, whoa, like, what, this came out in 92, so we're coming up on 4 years shy of 30 years ago. This is still referenced like in pop culture. It's kind of amazing. 3 years shy of 30 years. Buscemi, this kind of launched Buscemi, which I'm glad because he's such an interesting actor. I like Buscemi. I think this and Fargo really kind of like, not that he's like a big leading man in stuff, but everybody knows who Steve Buscemi is now. And he pops up in stuff all the time. And I hope he's getting a lot of work, but it seems like he gets to do like kind of odd stuff, which is fun. But this and Fargo, I think, really launched Buscemi out there.
He's weird, but I've always liked Buscemi.
I think that's everybody. He seems weird, but he's likable. Even when his character in this is not likable. He's arguably one of the more off-putting characters, even though technically, like, most of the other characters do far worse things. Like, their actions are worse in this than his. But he's just got this kind of nasty way about him. Also, Mr. Blue is in the opening scene, and then you never see him again.
Right.
I thought that's interesting. And Tarantino, no offense to Quentin Tarantino, but he's in the opening scene, and then the only other scene you see him is when he dies, and it's also kind of like good. He's not bad, but he's so Tarantino, it takes me out of it. You know what I mean?
Right. And he wanted to play Mr. Pink.
Really?
Yeah, which I thought would have been kind of weird.
I mean,
he said Buscemi did a way better job.
Oh, yeah, I don't doubt that. But if he's going to cast him as another character, Mr. Pink probably would have been the way to go. In pairing this up with The Killing, I was looking at other movies. I kind of wanted to pair it up with City on Fire. Except I couldn't find, I don't have a copy of it. I'm sure it's out there. I probably could have rented it on some digital service, but it wasn't as easily accessible, and I had The Killing already. And The Killing is the movie that Tarantino acknowledges is like a prime influence on this movie. However, City on Fire has scenes like wholesale scenes like lifted for this movie. That whole like Mexican standoff situation at the end. I mean, not that the Mexican standoff scene is totally unique, but there's like an almost identical scene, and the scenario is very similar in that other movie, in City on Fire, and it plays out almost identically. Like there's kind of wholesale lifting of stuff. I'm curious. I'm curious about it too myself. Like I've only seen bits. I haven't seen the whole thing. So I almost paired that with this, but again, we went to Killing. Star ratings. I'll jump first since you went first last time. I'm going to give this 5 stars, which is actually an increase over my last viewing, which I had apparently given it 4.5 stars. I'm going to go ahead and bump this up to a full 5-star movie. I think it's fantastic. And some of the stuff that, for whatever reason, kind of sagged for me on previous watches, which is mainly when it goes into Tim Roth's backstory, I didn't like so much in the past, but this time I don't know why, but I kind of appreciated it more. And overall, I think it's great. I think it's well done. It's well made. I like the aspects of it that do feel cheap. I think it adds to it. I wouldn't say it's necessarily perfect. There's some stuff that doesn't need to be there. Some of the, like, I get some of the racist stuff. They're criminals and it's like exploitation movie. I kind of get that, but it's definitely seems heavier handed than need be. And really, the characters are all despicable, but I don't think they're supposed to be anything but you're hard pressed to find a likable character. They're all dirtbags.
Right.
That said, again, I just think it's really well made and a completely solid debut movie. Directorial debut movie. How about you?
I am going to go again with the 4 out of 5. There are some parts for me that was a little slow, and then kind of like unanswered questions I had about it. But knowing the budget and kind of his first outing, I think this is a very solid movie. I'm giving it a 4 out of 5.